All right, this is SSL Family Dad, and today we're talking all about wet hay. All right, so this is our first cutting here in Michigan for the year, and we've got a lot of really great hay that we're able to put in the barn. We had real tall. We've got a mixed grass, timothy, alfalfa, some orchard grasses, and some clovers and things like that that's been planted here before we moved in, and we're able to get some pretty good hay here. However, we couldn't get it all done in time. We had rain coming at the end of the week last week, and we tried to get everything raked and dried and baled before the rain came, and we just ran out of time. The hay just wasn't dry enough to start baling earlier, and we ended up having to leave some of it out in the field. It rained all day long. It wasn't just a quick storm that came through. It pretty much rained from about 5 in the morning until about 6 or 7 at night, off and on all day long, and really soaked the hay that was left out there. So let me take you through what I did to try to recover some of it and turn it into some decent bales that we could use, and also what we're going to do with the rest of it that there's just no way we're going to get it baled. All right, so we're out here with a few of our smaller windrows on this side field, and this stuff all got rained on, unfortunately, and it's dried out now. But what I had to do with it is that day after it rained, so it rained all day, the next day about afternoon I came out and I raked it. But with that roll rake, that John Deere rake I have, I just hit it with the outside edge, so just ran my tires right down the windrow, and that outside edge of the rake will just take this windrow and it just flips it right over. So they got that wet, all that wet spot on the bottom of it flipped upside down. I had to do that about 3 times before I was able to get this dried. Every day, it took me about 3 days. The weather conditions weren't great either. It wasn't real sunny, it wasn't real hot, so it just took a while to dry back out. Now this stuff here, you can see, you know, some of the stuff here just kind of turned black, you know, as it sat in that moisture overnight the first night and during the day that day. It's sun bleached now, so you know it's all brown and some of it looks blackish, and this is just not good hay. It's dry enough for me to bale the majority of this here, and that's what I was going for. I got to clean this off the field, right? But I would never sell this to anybody. This is not hay that I would sell with, you know, black leaves in it and stuff like that and all brown looking. You know, some people will sell this stuff. I don't, this is not good quality hay, so I would never want to put my name on this. But this is great for our animals here throughout the summer. So I can use this. Our goats and our pigs will eat this just fine. They'll pick through and they'll sort through it and they'll get what they want out of it and leave the rest. It ends up being bedding, and then we clean it out. It goes in the compost pile and we use it in our gardens next year. So some of these, this center row here, whenever I rake, I usually end up with a center row that's a little bit thicker, and that rake just doesn't do a great job of dealing with larger windrows. And so you'll see the top of this is nice and dry and fluffy, and this is actually some pretty decent hay, about a layer in. But then you get into the middle where this was rolled, and it rolls it real tight, that rake does. And you can see this stuff is, I mean, this stuff didn't even dry. We've got black leaves and stuff here, probably some mold starting to form, and I can feel in here this is just wet. The further I dig in here, look at that, just black and nasty, and that's what happens when the stuff gets wet like that. I mean, this is just awful. So this I won't feed to anybody. This will get straight to compost or straight to the garden. No matter what happens to this hay out here, it's got to come off the field. I can't let it, you know, kill the next harvest of grass growing up, and it's all got to be used. You know, this is a resource we're basically grass farmers here. This is where everything starts. This goes to our animals. Our animals produce more animals for us. They produce meat for us. They produce eggs for us, whatever they produce. Milk, the goat's milk. They all start with the grass resource. Once it gets into them and they've produced what they produce, their manure, and which is again a resource right from this field, that manure gets composted, and that's what feeds all of our gardens that produces food for us. So everything gets used here, no matter what happens to it. Even this hay that got wet, it's a loss, yes. It's a little bit of a financial hit for us. We're not going to be able to sell as much this year, but it will all go to use, and we're definitely going to get something back from it. It just might be 1 or 2 steps away from the hay bale itself. For those of you who have been following along, I'm using the old Oliver 50, the 1955 Oliver baler, and this thing's been working very, very well. However, I have had some issues with the knotters this year so far. I've been missing a lot of knots and breaking strings and things like that. I'm just trying to get this thing dialed in. It's really finicky. It really depends on, you got to run it at just the right speed. You got to go just the right speed. Your windrows have to be just right. And once everything is dialed in, you got the tightness of the bales, set correctly here, this thing will crank out bales just fine. But it's taken me just about the full first cutting to really get this thing dialed in. Good job driving. All of you. What are you doing? All right, well, we've just about got all those fields cleared off and all of the hay either in the barn in a good bale worth using, or out into our pumpkin patch, or ready to go in our corn patch here once I get that tilled up and ready to cover those weeds as well. So I know some people are probably thinking about the hay seeds that I'm putting into the pumpkin patch and the corn patch and all that stuff. There's a lot of seed that's going to be in that hay, and yes, a lot of it's going to get into that soil. That's totally fine. The idea is that hay, as it breaks down, is going to smother out any seeds that are going to start to sprout this late in the season anyway, and as those pumpkins grow, they're going to shade everything out as well. So by the time those seeds get a root, they're not going to have any sunlight, and that's the idea anyway. Another thing, I know a lot of people probably have already started typing their comments that I should get a tedder. A tedder is a kind of a different type of a hay rake that fluffs the hay up into really fluffy kind of windrows, and you can really adjust it to help drying of the hay. Definitely something that I have been looking into and will continue to look for. When I find a good deal on one, I will definitely grab it. It would make drying out rained on hay much easier. It would also speed up my drying time, since I have a sickle bar that I'm using to cut our hay. And so a tedder would be a great investment for us here, something I'll look for down the road. We were able to recover a lot of that hay, and all that hay in the backside there is going to be for our own consumption. It's not as nice as the stuff that we got off right away after we cut and raked and dried it out before the rain. The stuff over here will sell, and you know what, this is plenty of hay for us to sell to recoup all the costs for the year, as far as fuel and oil and grease and maintenance on the equipment and all that kind of stuff. That'll pay for all of that stuff, plus give us a little extra income. And we still have a second and a third cutting this year to get still. Even though those are smaller cuttings, that'll still be another few hundred bales for us. So every year somebody comments, I had emails last year, don't put wet hay in your barn, it's going to start on fire. I'd never put wet hay in the barn. Any bales that were, I've got some set aside here, anything that felt real heavy, it may have some wet spots in it or some wet grass got baled in there, I set that stuff aside. It goes on the top of the stack, or it will go right to the animals first. You don't want to put rained on wet hay in your barn. If the bales are too wet and you stack it together like this, it actually can, spontaneous combustion can occur, and it can get real hot and start to compost in there and start the drier stuff around it on fire, and nobody wants that. So Dealing with rained on hay is never fun. It's always great if we have perfect conditions, but especially here in Michigan, weather is hard to predict. So we use it for whatever we can around here, and nothing goes to waste. Thumbs up on the video if you guys enjoyed, got some entertainment. Hopefully it helps somebody out who's kind of dealing with rained on hay. It's not a loss completely. There's all kinds of uses for it, and you definitely can dry it out and make something from it no matter what. So as always, guys, thanks for watching. Have a good one.